Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Practical Founders Podcast, where every week we hear an amazing story from a serious founder who built a valuable software company and did it without big funding. I'm your host, Greg Head, and this week my guest is Chris Savage, the co founder and CEO of Wistia. Wistia is that popular video marketing platform for small and mid-sized businesses to use video across their entire marketing, sales, and across their businesses that doesn't go on YouTube. This business is almost 20 years old. They raised a little angel funding, but they grew profitably for 10 years before buying out their early investors and going long. So Chris talks about being a longtime CEO with his co-founder, running this company. It's probably in the range of 100 million in revenues and very profitable. He shares what it takes to go long and the journey they went through and how it's working for him. And we're live with Chris Savage, the CEO and co-founder of Wistia. Welcome to the Practical Founders Podcast, Chris.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, and there you are on video with your super setup. I've watched your videos through the years, and your setup and your lighting and the whole production value keeps getting improved because you've been in the video business for a long time. And this is a great story about a long time in a practical SaaS business. You may break the record for the longest CEO of a SaaS business because you got started when SaaS was pretty early and you're still going. You're one of the few who's almost hit 20 years. Maybe Mark Benioff would be another one up there. So very exciting here. Chris, why don't we go ahead? Yeah, sorry.
No, I was going to say, I don't think I've ever had my name mentioned with Mark Benioff before. So that's always fun. And it's funny because you say that it is, it's like, that sounds glamorous maybe to some people, but like if you saw the first 8 years, you wouldn't think that, it's like, it took a long time before my job was actually be CEO. It was a long time. I was like copywriter, bad graphic designer, salesperson, content marketer, so it took a long time before I actually got to do the job the way it's done now.
Well, that's the founder phase, the make it up and do what it requires.
Yeah.
And I guess we call ourselves CEOs when you have other people who do most of the work, something like that, from founder to CEO.
Yes, I guess. Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, tell us about Wistia. It's a very popular product in the world these days. Now, maybe not as popular as Salesforce or something, but tell us about Wistia. What is it now and where's the company now?
Yeah, so Wistia is a video marketing platform. So we are a SaaS platform, but everything we do is trying to make it easier for marketers to get value out of video. For a long time, what that meant is that we were really a hosting, management, and analytics platform. And then the last few years, we've added in the ability to make videos and to edit videos and to put on live events with a whole other slew of things to help you collaborate. So many things. But our goal is that we can make an all-in-one, and it's actually easy to move between the different parts. So if you put on a live event, the recording for the live event shows up instantly after in your account. You can edit it, you can repurpose it, you can fix it, you can make clips. The analytics, you can see the full story from who came to the page and maybe whether or not they registered, all the way through to who showed up to the live event, to who came and watched the video and was on demand, to who watched the clips. We're trying to give you the full view and make it really simple. The business was started in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Today, we're remote first business. We have people all across the US. We have about 180 employees. And we handle, hundreds and hundreds of millions of videos, sometimes billions of videos per month. And we have a lot of customers. So we're really focused on small and medium-sized businesses. So there's a lot of those out there. And I have a lot. There's so many angles to go into in this discussion, but hopefully that kind of paints the high level picture.
Awesome. Can you talk about revenues and specific customer numbers? What can you do to get us in the ballpark?
Unfortunately. Yeah, I mean, I could tell you that we have millions of users on the platform, and I could tell you that we've disclosed our numbers in the past. We've grown quite a bit since then, but I'm not disclosing today what the numbers are.
Okay, well, that's part of the practical founder game. We don't get to hear the gory or the glamorous details, the big funding announcements, the big public numbers. I know some of your competitors are public, for better or worse, and all of that. It's all remains a secret. And you're selling to small and mid-sized businesses, and this is a video for business platform. This isn't YouTube that, which is video for YouTube advertising. You put it out there, you don't have much control, but a lot of people could see it. And this is video to share mostly for marketing purposes, to get more customers, to build your brand. You're hosting those videos, you get the analytics, and it's all different there. Is that the basic idea?
Yeah, that's basically it. I mean, I think it's, YouTube is amazing. I use YouTube every day, and it is an entertainment platform, it's a social media platform. I think for a marketer who's trying to market a product or a service, you should definitely use YouTube, and you should figure out like what's the content that people are going to search for on there that's different than the things that they would get a better answer if they were actually on my website. That's different from the people who are already customers or are really at the bottom of my funnel, and I don't want them to leave. That's a thing that is like, it's very simple difference. Like the very basics, we give you a player. There's no ads in it.
Right.
You have total control. That means you can put calls to action. You can capture emails. You can tie it into your other analytics systems. Like that means that for that group, you can understand the impact of video really specifically on a person by person basis, on an audience basis, which allows you then to better use video, make better videos. There's so much stuff that starts happening when you get there. And that's kind of the foundational difference between us and like the free platforms. But then there's obviously a lot, as I was talking about before, there's a lot in the platform. There's a lot that we do, which is also a challenge for us today that's different than it was 5 years ago. 5 years ago, it was much simpler to describe what we do. And today, because we have really become a platform, there's just so many more really customer problems that we solve.
Well, and since 2006, it's 2023, so it's almost 20 years old. So the story usually changes quite a bit in those phases. Salesforce went from just Salesforce automation in a browser, and now it's CRM and everything, a whole bunch of other things there. They keep modifying their story. But video is important to your business proposition, was there from the start and is still important, and you've filled in around that.
Yeah, and I think the thing that's really changed for us, I get this question a lot now that it's like, it's been almost 18 years since we started. People are like, why are you still doing it? What's it like? Yeah. Like, and the interesting thing was when we started, I would talk to customers in sales calls, and the first version of Wistia was a private and secure way to share video. So our first customers were using us to collaborate on videos, to share videos that honestly, they were sending, this really dates myself, but I guess I said 17 years already. They were sending DVDs around, shipping them. So we're like, we can give you an online
TV and movie industry people in the.
There was some of that. Our first customer was a medical device company, and they had videos of surgeries that they did, and so they would look at the video to iterate on their device. And so they had their clinical trials were around the world. So they do a clinical trial in Europe, or they do a clinical trial in Chile, and then the doctor would take the DVD that recorded it. They would hand it to somebody who would then ship it back to headquarters. And so we made a secure, easy way to share that stuff and collaborate around it. And that also
before then was a real pain.
It was a huge pain.
Download the real player or some other codec or whatever we called it.
Yes. Yeah. So it's I think a lot about like what's exactly the same from when we started and what's completely different.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's exactly the same is the moment that we saw suddenly it was possible with the right open source tech to make video easy for everyone. That's still the same. People still value that. And we're just solving that problem in different ways. But then like when we started, people had videos of surgeries, great. But I would talk to companies, they'd be like, this looks really cool. If I had videos for my products, I would love that. But I can't spend 20 or 30 grand per video. Right. So I'm not going to be a customer because I don't have any video. And that is really different. Is people will still spend that much sometimes for a launch video or a bigger budget video, but anyone can make a video now. And anyone can make a video with their computer. And that is just extremely, extremely different than how things were when we started. And that's also why, bizarrely, having done this for this long, I think our market today might even be more early stage in a way than it was when we started.
Because not everybody's killing it with video these days.
It's just that business. It's like everyone in 2020, people realized that your computer is a camera. And also our culture was reset where we could see inside each other's homes on camera, and that was okay. And, if you remember, there was this guy who called into a news program. This is probably like 2018, and his kid like
Yeah.
walked in the background
Yeah.
and he didn't realize. And that was a dramatic, huge cultural moment because it was so rare and odd and crazy. And that's the norm. And that is these two things, like seeing your webcam and your computer as a camera and the cultural change, means that the expectation now is that anyone could be asked to make or use a video. And you're expected often that like you could do it for close to free. That, because everyone's just getting started with that, and the market for that is much larger than everything I've seen before this, it feels very much actually to me like it's the very early stages of the biggest market that I've seen.
And were you like the rest of us who said, maybe 5 years, the whole market will be cooked, it'll be big and everybody will be doing it? And now
in the early days, 18,
yeah. No,
oh my
now
God,
we are.
yes. We were so sure. We saw this happening. We're like, broadband is here. The encoding is done for you. It's going to get easy. We're like, this is going to take 2 years. And we actually planned to do it for 6 months. That was our plan. My co-founder and I were like, we have enough money to survive for 6 months. So we will start this business. We'll go for 6 months. We'll either sell it, because I had no idea what else you would do, or we'll just give up and just tell no one that we even tried. That was literally our plan. And I have been shocked by how long some things have taken and humbled by that. And on the other side, brought like immense joy by realizing just how fun it is to build things. And so where I am now is like, and it took me a few years to figure this out. I was like, the actual journey is fun. And if the journey is really fun and you can set things up around that where you don't know how long it's going to take, but you need to be persistent, then the input of what the journey is like really matters. And that's why I'm still doing it. I love what I do. I love it. It's weird to say, I think even more than I ever have before, even with all this change and all the things that I've seen.
Well, I've seen a lot of your videos, and you say fun and love a lot more than most CEOs who've been around a business a long time. So one of the things we'll explore with you is what's it like to run a company through thick and thin, for all this time, and to still want to do it with your co-founder, Brendan, and still love it and have fun with it. Most founders that get to their 2, 3, 5 million ARR, they either think, I won't have fun at 180 employees. That doesn't sound like fun. Or, well, I don't know if I want to do this for a long time. I'm already burnt out. But you're energetic and still kicking. And, the last 2, 3 years of Wistia, you guys have had a burst of innovation in the product. And it's really exciting to see. So let's go back, Chris, way back to the Wayback Machine here. Back when you started this wasn't your 10th job and your 14th, software company. You were pretty young here. How did you start this?
I was 23, I think, when we started. And yeah, it was basically a year out of college. My co-founder, Brennan, and I had lived in the same freshman hall at school and been good friends. And we had done projects together in school. And I focused on filmmaking while I was in school, and was fortunate enough to work on a bunch of projects. So I had like a resume. I had a reel is what we called it. So it's like, here's my 4 minutes that you should watch. It's like the trailer of the documentary that I worked on, and the short films I did, and this thing I shot, and this thing whatever. And so I grew up like as an early adopter. I grew up in a house where my dad is a computer science professor. My older brother worked at Microsoft very early. My brother-in-law also did. I was just around new tech all the time, constantly playing with it. And so I saw YouTube, and I saw it real early, and I saw it taking off. And it was interesting to me because I had tried to be a part of a few filmmaking communities that were online before, and none of them took off. There was almost no activity. And it was funny. You would think the filmmaking communities would be the people who had the content. So you'd think that they would be uploading lots of videos, and they weren't. They were confused. Like, should I use Real Player? Should I use QuickTime? Should I encode into Flash? If I encode into Flash, you had to make your own player. It was not easy back then to like have a finished video and then show it to somebody. The other thing is everyone was obsessed with quality. You do whatever you could to make the quality as high as possible of the video. And then the last thing what they wanted to do is compress it and put it online. And so it was this like funny thing where it just meant that the filmmaking community was not that vibrant. And so then when I saw YouTube just exploding, the thing that just jumped out to me was that they were actually doing all the encoding and all the technical work for you so your video could play back. So you didn't have to know anything at all about online video. And we looked into it. We realized that they were using open source tools to do the encoding, so we could do that. We talked about, Brendan and I talked about like an initial idea around this space because we like, hey, we think we see a trend. We think this is going to be big. What idea makes sense in this trend? And the initial idea was to make a filmmaking competition website. So it'd be a place where filmmakers would compete to like make ads for brands. And the monetization path would be like Pepsi hosts a competition, a bunch of people make ads, they give the winner some amount of prize money, which is way less than they would have spent on the ad itself. And the exposure for the filmmaker would be better than winning a film festival. And I had been, one of the films I worked on won a bunch of film festivals, and I saw you don't get any exposure. Like you get basically nothing. You get like a pat on the back and you walk out, no one knows or cares. And so this seemed like a cool thing. And we were able to convince ourselves that we should start the business. And so I was doing all these filmmaking projects, which I stopped doing. Brendan was working for a software company and he quit his job. And the two of us just like set out to start. And that's like why we decided to get going in the first place.
And so video was kind of getting easier or almost getting easier. You could see it was about to get easier. YouTube had proven that. Was the whole data center storage thing a big shift as well? You didn't have to build a $2 million data center with terabytes. That was a huge
shift. We were some of the earliest cloud customers that existed. Like we saw Amazon's S3 and we were able to get a CDN contract that was, our first bill was like 40 cents a month. And our first S3 bill was like 15 cents. And so I think our total server cost for the first month was maybe like $55. And that is why we were able to start. And we were months into it. And had we not started at that exact moment, if we had tried to do this idea 6 months before, we never would have gotten anywhere because we didn't have the money to start. I didn't know what angel investing was back then. Like we literally couldn't have done it.
So did you get somewhere quickly? By the end of the year, you had paying customers and then it was off like a shot? Or how long did you bump around trying to figure out what this thing is and what the opportunity is? Very classic early market figuring it out problem.
That first year was, we tried so many things that first year. We started working the filmmaking competition site, but we instantly started over designing it. I didn't know that at the time, but we were like, okay, if we have these successful competitions, how will we keep these filmmakers interested? They're not doing competitions. Like we need a job board of creative jobs. Yeah. And so we'll make a job board also, but this will be a special job board because creatives are willing to travel. So it shouldn't just be like only if you're in Boston or New York, you should, and they can also do many things. They can do graphic design, but they can also edit. And so we literally architected crazy things. And so the initial thing we're going to build got bigger and bigger and bigger very rapidly. And then, so not a shortcut, but because that got so big, we had all these other little ideas that popped up that we gave ourselves the freedom to try. And so we were just buying domains left and right back then. Anytime anyone had a good idea, we had one domain that we bought that was called ironingtheflag.com. So it's like a patriotic metaphor, ironing the flag. Okay. We just thought it was funny. I don't know why, we bought the domain. And then we were talking about the Iraq war, which you're in at that time. And we were having a conversation. I was like, have we been in Iraq as long as we were in World War II? And we looked it up. And we were 4 days from having been in Iraq longer than we had been in World War II. Mm-hmm. So we took ironingtheflag.com, which we already owned. We put a countdown on it. There was a giant countdown, time until we'd been in Iraq longer than we'd been in World War II. And I think that was the first summer of Reddit, or it was very early Reddit. It was either the first or second summer, I can't remember. And we put it on there and it went right to the top. And then a bunch of articles started coming out, these political blogs, Wall Street Journal, all these people wrote stories about this thing. Now, I'm not saying that we were the first people to figure it out, but I think we were. And it was this crazy moment, which was probably 2 months into starting, where we watched something go viral and we watched it have an impact. And that was pretty nuts. And then we had a few other small things like that actually went viral that were all kind of like fun. We just kept getting distracted with like get rich quick schemes, basically. Like, do you remember $1 Million Homepage?
Mm-hmm.
It's $1 Million Homepage, for people don't know, was a website, 1,000,000 pixels. This guy sold each pixel for $1.
For $1.
And we saw that and we're like, I mean, you could make more money if you had a more clever approach. So we made something called Fame Thrower, which is another clever name.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea was same idea as $1 Million Homepage, kind of. There's these boxes you could buy, but whoever spent the most, their box would be the biggest. And it would just link to your website. And it would be so ridiculous that people were spending money on this that we thought it would get press. So I went to $1 Million Homepage, I clicked around, I found a bunch of people who were willing to buy those pixels, and I sent, spam emails to them. And I'm like, hey, this new thing's launching, Fame Thrower, like it's going to be incredible. And now this is after the ironing the flag went viral. By the way, I don't think I've told any of these stories publicly, I'm realizing. So this is, I think, I've never gotten this far. So.
After doing Wistia video for 18 years, you could remember all the other crazy experiments you did before.
Yes.
Here.
But it was interesting because it shows you what happens is like ironing the flag had gone viral. Fame Thrower, I send those emails. We make $1,300 in the first day. And Brett and I look at each other and we're like, we failed. This thing didn't go viral. Now, obviously, $1,300 in one day for a site like this is insane. And had we stayed on it, it probably would have worked. I think we actually got like a net positive. I don't think it would have been the most valuable thing I could have done in my career. But it was interesting to try this and see it not take off, but still make some money. And at this point, we were realizing some of these things we made were so simple. We were getting a better signal from simple things than complex things. And we said our filmmaking competition website idea is way too complex. So we simplified it down and we made instead a portfolio website for filmmakers.
Upload a video, share it on the web.
Yes. And we'll give you the portfolio, which says like your name and your budgets you work under. And it'll be like the reel I was telling you about before, but now instead it's a website. And we made that. That was easier to make, took a few months. And then we started, we were trying to promote it and get people to see it and what have you. And it started to go. We had hundreds of users on it, 400 or 500 users of it. People were updating their portfolios and stuff. But we looked at this thing. We're trying to convince these people to, what could we sell them? What could we give them that's more valuable? And the ideas we're coming up with, they were not that excited about. And we also had ironing the flag go viral. We knew how much money it made from advertising. And it turned out 40,000 visitors in the first day, and then 30,000, then 20,000, and 10,000 had made us a total of $100. And so we knew, even if we had like we would need unbelievable scale to actually make money with advertising. We actually had the data to know that. And so we're like, okay, this is not good. And that led us to finally, at this point, we're probably 8 months into starting. Mm-hmm. This whole time we were trying to go to local community events and like get to know other tech founders. And we had been going to these events and we were clearly the video people. We were constantly talking about video. And a lot of times I'd be talking to someone and they'd be like, hey, I have questions about video, or we want to put video in our product or whatever. And so we just started listening to those people. And pretty quickly we found our way to our first potential customer, which was this medical device company. And they said, we need a private, secure way to share videos. It needs to be simple. It needs to be easy to use. And we knew we could do that with the technology we'd already built. We were talking about something like this as an add-on to the portfolio website. So we'll just make it its own thing. And we made up pricing for these folks, literally just on a printed piece of paper. There was a light plan that was $100 a month. There was a medium plan that was $200 a month. There was a heavy plan that was $400 a month. And we went to meet with them, slid the paper across the table. The decision maker looked at it, this guy, Ron, and he goes, I mean, we need the best. We'll take the heavy plan. I'm like, great. And then where's the product? Like, we have to build it. And we spent 2 weeks. We made the most minimal thing we could ever possibly make. And it worked. And they signed up. And then that light bulb was like, oh, these people really value the video stuff because their business, this isn't their core competency. The filmmakers didn't value it the same way. We didn't have to go viral for this thing to work. And
it took you and Brendan about a year to
took us a
learn
year.
that entrepreneurial lesson, which is look at all the things we could do. Look at all the cool stuff. Look at this. Try this. And then you go, oh, somebody will pay me for something that's
Yes.
really important that we could
Yes.
actually do that nobody else is doing.
Yes. And then it was actually, I mean, it felt slow back then. It was like one customer a month for the first few months, few months, and then 2 and 3. But in hindsight, I think it was actually pretty quick. And,
Yeah.
you know, there was many, many other inflection points over the years. But that first year was that journey to that place of, wow, the most minimal thing we can do that adds value for the largest number of people and solving a problem that isn't their core competency is going to be more highly valued. And people in B2B will pay to save time or get efficiency or do something they can't do otherwise. And all that stuff has remained completely true and throughout the entire history of the business.
And were you both coding this or doing whatever it was
No.
to make
So
this happen?
I was doing more design stuff because I had a background on that. What was a part of the filmmaking stuff, I had done a lot of animation and other things. And we eventually decided we need to divide. Brendan will build the product. I will do, marketing, sales, and operations.
I see. Okay. So ... Did you just find one after another and do this deal and eventually got to, I don't know, a few hundred customers that got you paying your fees?
The insight, the big leaps were, we had no credit card payments at first. Everything was invoice online, and we didn't disclose our pricing back then, so we didn't know what the pricing should be. So if you went to the website, it didn't say. And we got to about 30 customers, all people using video internally, like securely. And we'd actually built analytics, and the analytics were really important for those early customers because they were using us for training, and they needed to know if people were watching the videos and for compliance and a few other things.
Did that person watch 3/4 of the video? Where did people leave? Where did they repeat? All that stuff.
And actually, by being this focused, we ended up with analytics, video analytics, before YouTube even had them. And so we had this stuff, and they started telling us like, hey, we want to embed these videos on our website. We want to understand our marketing videos. And we were like, no, we're the secure thing. You can't do that. And they were like, please. Everyone kept asking, please, can we embed them? Please. And so at about 30 customers, we figured out we should actually let people embed the videos. We figured out we should also make the product self-service instead of having to talk to sales, because the prices that people wanted to pay were too cheap. So they were willing to spend a few $100 per month, but that you can't have sales really scale up at that, especially at our stage. And we had no funding. Or maybe we just closed our angel round. Yeah, that's right. We just closed an angel round. And so we basically made it self-service, added the embedding, analytics on embeds, and made the product slightly easier to use, and then it took off. And so
it
we're
went,
like 3
at first
years
it was
in.
you selling it, and
It was me. We had one sales guy, and it was funny actually. We hired this guy, and he was really great. He had a lot of experience. And I remember the first month he started, I closed a deal, and it was like the biggest deal we'd gotten. I'm like, look at me, look at this deal I closed. Like, why can't you close a deal like this? And he was like, hey, you want me to do sales or not? Let me do it. You need to do something else. And I was like, oh, I'll do marketing. And he's like, okay. And then of course that worked. And like the focus meant I'll market and I'll try to get people to pay attention. I get more people to sell too, which is great. And so we were doing all of that back then. But it was this shift of, we were about 3 years in, and when we had the 30 customers, and 2 months later we had 200. And so we were just adding whatever that is, 75 customers a month. It quickly changed. And it continued.
And these were, now people could just go to your website and say, I want to host a video. I can log in, set it up, freemium or whatever we say in those days. These days it's PLG, but you could log in, set it up, upload a video, share it out, embed it in your website, and not have to talk to anybody. Yeah. Did you have the new dream that we'll never have to talk to our customers? It'll just be...
we definitely had that. I mean, we got really religious about a lot of these things, which I think is really important. It also hurt us later, which is like how this stuff works. Like, we're like, it is so important that everything be absolutely frictionless. Our support experience, our sales experience, the sign-up experience. We tried to remove people left and right. Like up until that point, there was a phone number on the website. You do all this stuff, and we added a huge amount of efficiency. And that added up. Like as the business grew, we hit 10 million in revenue with 30 people, and I think we had 3 million in EBITDA. And
There we
we
go.
had no sales. We had no sales. It was just support. And I remember thinking a lot of things at that moment, but I was thinking, oh, I really know what I'm doing. This is really great. And like, oh, we have such an incredible customer experience. And there was a moment around there where I talked to somebody and they said, man, Wistia, your customer experience is the worst I've ever seen. I was like, what are you talking about? Like our CSAT and support is incredible. People love us, all these reviews. And they're like, no, I'm not a customer. I'm trying to buy, but you won't talk to me. And it was like, well, I'm like, well, why do you want to buy? You could just sign up. And they're like, no, I need help. Like, and I was like, oh crap. Like we've gone so far towards this like religious belief that everything needs to be frictionless that we actually ignored a part of the customer experience that's massive. And we were creating a terrible customer experience because we had taken this approach. And I think that just kind of happens.
Well, you found your way to this business customer that needed to host internal videos, and then the marketers who started to share them. What was the big epiphany? What were the big epiphanies between 1 million ARR and 10 million you just talked about? Profitable. You guys were off like a shot. I don't know how long that took, but was it you filled out the product, you got the exposure going with some?
It was a couple things. Like we got momentum on the product. And as we zeroed in on people and the experience of embedding the video, that meant that we were able to build features that were different by getting more focused. You know, that's a big story of Wistia. We've gotten actually more and more focused over the years. We're even more focused on who our target customers today, even though we're much bigger than we have ever been. And it's weird. You wouldn't think it's possible, but in big markets, like that's what you can do. And it was product momentum. We launched some marketing features, some specific ones I remember really had a big impact. Like one was you could replace a video that already existed. So you have a video on your website. You don't have to take the embed code off and put a new one up. You can go into Wistia, see the video, replace it.
Yeah.
It is a very simple feature. Everyone gets it on Wistia today.
The marketer doesn't have to call IT for the
Correct.
website back then.
But we didn't think it was going to have the response it did. It took us 2 hours to build that. Literally. And we took 2 hours to build it. We made a funny video. We'd also figured out that we should be having fun in our brand along the way here. And we made a funny video about like showing us the video on our website, and the name Wistia is misspelled. So like, oh crap, we have to fix it. What are we going to do? Oh, we just replaced something. It's really fast. And that two things together, it just took off like a shot. And so tons of people share the video. Oh my God, it's so great. I want this. People sign up, they start using it. And I didn't even realize that like you couldn't replace the video on YouTube. Like it was impossible because you could game the algorithm. So that simple feature, because we'd focused on the marketer, was actually differentiated. And there's just a lot of examples like that. And so the deeper we got, the better we understood the customer, the more impact we had. And then also the more successful we were profitable, which also allowed us to like take a long-term stance and also take more creative risks, where you don't need to see the payoff in the short term to do it. And as we
on
did
the
that
marketing side or in the
on the marketing side, but both sides truly. But on the marketing, it showed up as like funnier videos, songs, all these things that we like. I mean, I could tell you that's a whole other story of how we figured out that brand really mattered. But as we figured this stuff out, it was like putting gasoline on a fire. Like it was like everything went much, much, much faster when we put those two pieces together.
Well, you said the B word, which doesn't come up very often in SaaS startups. We have demand gen marketing and, the storytelling side of marketing. But marketing is get me some freaking leads, right? And you were doing the B thing, the brand game, meaning tell a story that isn't about selling something immediately. Content wasn't about selling anything immediately and help there. But you're probably the first of 90 founders on the podcast here. And I'm a SaaS software marketer by career. The, brand has kind of faded away from the early desperate growth solution. It's category creation and, messaging frameworks and so forth. What is brand to you? And how did that multiply everything, as you say?
Yeah. Brand is the idea that people have of your company when they think about it. It's like a space in their mind. And it's a collection of every interaction they've ever had with you. And that includes advertising, that includes content, that includes in-person experiences, that includes the product, service, everything. And everyone has a brand, whether or not you want to. So
Yeah.
your brand could be you're boring. Your brand could be you don't do anything interesting. That's fine. If you're not doing anything interesting, that's your brand. But that's not very differentiated. And I think we underestimate. It's very, very easy to underestimate the impact of emotions on decision making, right? Like we think we're rational beings and we're not. We are predominantly like irrational beings, right? Like economists are constantly confused by why people do lots of different things. I'll give you an example. It's like you have two products, Coke and Pepsi. Why is one sold more than the other? Aren't they basically the same thing, get the same benefit? Yes, I think we can all agree the brands are very different. When I drink a Coke, I'm brought back to like my youth. I have joy, fun, all these things. And it's like, that's not just the Coke. That's the advertisements and stuff. Now, I think we all agree B2C, it makes sense. So what about in B2B? Well, how does this work? Well, in B2B, when people are hiring a product to solve a job, like when they're, picking a company to work with, they're using it to gain efficiency, to improve something about their workday, to make more money. They're doing it where they believe they should be getting a benefit. But I think the most important word there is believe, because you don't know it's going to work. Nobody knows it's going to work. There's no guarantees. So if it's about belief, then ultimately there's a place where it's about emotion. And if you have two companies that look like they have the same product and services, and one of them doesn't make you excited and you have no interest in, and the other one makes you excited and you feel like a positive connection to, you will pick that one. That's just how it works. And so I just think like we stumbled in backwards to this basically, but that I am more convinced by the day that there's a reason why people are putting their logos, like tons of B2B companies are putting their logos on like F1 cars because they know brand works. They know that recognition of the logo matters. And if you associate it with a fast car, an exciting thing, like that is going to change your perspective of a B2B software product. So I could go on and on for about brand. And it's amazing I'm the first person I ever talked about if that's really true. Because you could just get a sense if you're listening of just how much opportunity there is here. It's like there's so much opportunity. Like if there's no standout brand in your category, then there's an opportunity basically.
Well, and a lot of it is when you start the brand as the founder. It's literally their personality and persona and their actions coming through. Yeah, you can feel it and you could see it, and it's in the DNA, and they hire people like them and so forth. But deliberately doing things that tell a story out there. I guess it's no coincidence that video is one of the best ways to tell a story with emotion.
Yes,
that creates an impact as opposed to a simple image or a better words on the page, something like that. Video delivers more emotion than other channels.
Yes, but I'll tell you the story of how we figured this out because it's like very interesting. We used to have a team page on Wistia.com that was just like the 4 first employees, me and Brett and 2 other folks, and it said management. And then it implied that there was like a ton of other people on the team.
Yeah.
There's no one else on the team. I think that was kind of obvious. Like if you were to come across this website, you're like, this is a small company. But we thought it looked like we were really big because we were trying to appear big to be like businessy for businesses, right? We're like, we serve businesses. We're a business. And no one ever mentioned that team page ever. It never came up. Well, we grow. We hire 2 more people. You know what? I start to feel bad that they're not on the website because they can't even prove to their parents that they work at a real company. So it's like, we're like, this page doesn't matter. No one is going to this page. It's not swaying anyone to pick Wistia. We need to change it so that these other 2 people are on the page. And so we shoot a photo this time. There's no photos before. We shoot a photo of the 6 of us. Well, to keep it businessy, we stand in front of a whiteboard, but otherwise not businessy. It's just standing there.
Yeah.
And we all stoically look in the camera. It's like, and then the person who took the photo to try to get us in the mood was like, you gotta do something silly. So he made us like do 2 other silly poses, just like trying to get us to lighten up, right? Well, Brendan goes to put the new team page up, and it occurs to him while he's doing it that he can add all 3 photos, and he can make it so it switches between them for each person. And if he does that, it'll look like we're dancing. very poor dancing. So he puts an Easter egg on the page, which is if you type the word dance on our team page, it randomly switches between the different people. It starts playing music. He does this for us. He does this because it's fun. So it's actually the birthday of one of those new people. So he sends it to Jeff and he goes, "Hey, Jeff, like, look, happy birthday, buddy. Like the team page is up. You're on there. You can send it to your parents. And if you type dance, like just you wait till you see what it does." Well, he does this and the page goes viral. It goes top of Reddit, Hacker News, Twitter.
Yeah.
And bunch of comments, all this stuff. And this is surprising. We've had things go viral before, right? But never Wistia. So the first Wistia thing that goes viral, by the way, I'm making tons of content. I'm making the 10 reasons why you should choose a video hosting platform.
Good logical
Not
stuff.
a single one, nothing does anything, right? Like all the things about the product and the company and the needs is doing nothing. But this takes off. And then it goes by. We were like, that was fun. 2 weeks later, we get a ton of new customers sign up. Like, that's so funny. Well, it turns out at the time we had a 2-week trial. So that one day, when the page went viral, a bunch of people were like, what's this company? They looked around, they found it, they decided to sign up. They actually got value out of it. They became paying customers 2 weeks later. And that was the most mind-blowing moment. It was like, but I didn't try to tell them about video hosting. I didn't try to tell them about analytics. Like, I didn't try to convince them about our player. I didn't do any of that. It literally was just a silly page, but they figured out this other stuff because they cared. Mm-hmm. And then that was the first moment that gave us permission to try to do things like this, that were very unbusinessy, that were very not B2B. And over time, as we did that more and more, we continued to see that that is what works. Is like,
you seem like a pretty non-traditional guy. Like you and Brendan were just winging it with the company and doing this, and you try to act businessy and so forth. But I don't know if you came from the art school or whatever, but you were probably, doing everything the opposite of the way big companies did it.
I think we were, and I think we were craving creativity. I think that's what was exciting when we first started. We had all those other little projects. It was like hyper creative. And we buttoned it all up to be B2B. And then over time, we started putting the creativity into everything. And that became a key part of the sauce. And it still is. I mean, if you look at our brand and the things that we do, you'll see that all over the place.
So you had great video hosting and you kept improving the product. What was the difference between the 10 and 20 million? Was it you just kept pumping out content, pumping out crazy branding stuff, experimenting?
Yes.
Kind of.
Yeah, it was the same thing. I mean, we screwed up a lot of things. Mostly at that time, it was like org structure stuff. So I talk about we talked a little bit about having these religious beliefs. Well, I had some incorrect ones. And one of them was that we had to be flat to be creative.
Oh. I'm sorry to hear that. Yes.
Yes. And we were so sure because it was working so well. We're like, we figured it out. We got to write our values down. We got to establish our culture. That was all true. That was the right thing to do. But we made flat a value and it should never have been.
When did that run out of steam? Everybody reporting to you?
When we went from about 25, I mean, I really think it was 23 is the year. We went from 23 to 45 in a year, people. Yeah. That it all exploded. And what I didn't realize is that there's always hierarchy. There's always structure. You're just not making it clear if you say it's flat.
Yeah. There's a different hierarchy, the hidden hierarchy.
There's a hidden hierarchy and you can't scale and people don't know how to get answers. And so it often defaults towards tenure when you do that, which is not how you should establish hierarchy. Just because someone's been there a long time doesn't mean they're a good manager, doesn't mean that they're strategic, it doesn't mean that they're a good communicator, doesn't mean they're a good leader, but they may be an incredible IC. They may be an incredible creative partner, but it doesn't mean that you should just give them that. And I think we got confused in that. And so that slowed us down, took us some time to fix, to really reestablish what does it mean to work at Wistia? And what is hierarchy? And honestly, in many ways, like today, the company is so OKR focused, very rigid with our hierarchy, very clear on expectations for managers, and actually more creative than ever. And it was
Isn't that interesting? Right.
yes. And it was like when you have the right constraints,
Yeah.
you can create a space where people can actually have the freedom to be creative. And Creativity Inc., which is like the book by Ed Catmull. I love that book so much. That was one of the books for me that really like helped me see that of like, you can add structure, Toy Story, incredible movie, pulls at your heartstrings, unbelievably creative, 1,000 people working on it. How do you do it? It's like really interesting to think, how do you actually do that? And there is a way, and it's, the right structure, the right goals, the right communication, or the right culture. All these things start to add up. And as you get that right, you can be more creative even when you get bigger.
Well, Chris, you've got 180 employees. You've been doing this a long time. It's been a pretty big company for a while. Most practical founders, they get to 30 employees. They start to have managers in there and senior people and junior managers and people reporting to people. And you get to 75 and you got a senior leadership team and departments and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually about the time where founders say, I either like learning how to do the structure, being the CEO, not the crazy founder, creating the systems and the OKRs and the synchronization and the goals and all of that kind of thing. Do you have fun with 180 people? And it's not just managed by culture, it's managed by culture plus, synchronization and some structure. Like, is it fun with all of this? Are you having as much fun as it was when there was 10 people? Or I'm sure it's different, but what's it like?
I would say I'm having more fun. But I can only say that because we have an amazing senior management team.
There you
They
go.
own a lot of the right things. They know how to work together. They know how to make decisions. They know how to communicate within their departments. They give me the freedom to be able to do my job, which requires like thinking about the future. I kind of live in the future and the ultra present is how I would describe it. It's like, what are the implications of the tech that's coming? What are the big things happening in the market that we need to be thinking about? What are the things that we should be considering that no one's considering? What are the connections of things across the business that we should be making that no one's making?
Mm-hmm.
That's like future. You need thinking time. I need to play with other products. I need to understand where things are going. And then there's exact in the moment now, which is talking to existing customers, talking to prospective customers, talking to people who are doing the work in the business and doing that in like an organic way. And so my job is like at those two extremes and then bringing that together to make decisions in the business when they come up that require me to make them and try to guide like through that. My days end up being super creative. So I end up playing with lots of things, making videos, using new products, giving feedback on our product, getting into many details. And in many ways, it's like very similar to how it was in the beginning, except there's infinitely more stuff to do. So I like almost never get bored. It's like a new challenge every day.
Right.
But I can tell you, there's been times when it has not been fun. And it has been because we had the wrong team. We had a team that wasn't actually harmonious, didn't actually have the trust. We emphasized the wrong things. It's kind of hard to do that if you don't have that. But it's funny, even, we didn't really talk about this today, but we had the opportunity to sell the business and didn't sell.
Yeah, this is really important. Let's go through that because the business grew as video grew and the market grew and so forth. But then you had a sizable and maybe profitable business at that point, and that's a point where a lot of founders sell. Tell us about 2017?
So this is the moment. There's been 2 moments I've been pretty unhappy in the time I've been doing Wistia. One was a few years ago during COVID, with a lot of just rough people stuff where we couldn't figure out how to pull the right team together while being remote, not allowing to see each other in person and doing too many things at once. That I can't really get into it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Beyond that, the other moment was actually right when we had the opportunity to sell. And so we had 3 companies approach us. We had lots of companies, poke at Wistia over the years, but 3 came in, all good companies, talked to them, got offers. started talking about what we would do if we sold the business. And
with your
Brendan
co-founder.
and I,
Yeah,
right, with Brendan. So we sat there like, okay, if we the top company, like if we sell the business, we're probably gonna stay there for 2 years. They've told us that. They think that. We think that. It's just like, they're like, you're an entrepreneur. You're not gonna want to stay working here. We're like, okay, cool. So what are we gonna do in 2 years, Brendan? Well, I don't think I'm gonna want to retire. You don't think you're gonna retire. We think we actually have a really unique partnership at this point. We've been working together for over a decade. We would start something together again. Okay. What would we start? Well, we'd start something in the video space. Why? Because the video space is changing. There's a lot of really exciting stuff we want to get into. Who would we hire? Well, we have a list of people of who we'd hire. They work at Wistia. What type of culture would we build? It would be a really creative culture. It'd be a very long-term thinking culture. Okay. We're talking through all of this and we're like, well, why are we considering selling if we just would try to rebuild the company? And we realized in that moment that we were both pretty unhappy. And that's why we were considering selling. And we hadn't actually said that out loud because we were afraid. You know, it's one of those things like afraid to admit the problem because then you're going to have to deal with it. So we're like, we're both unhappy. And we started asking, why are we unhappy? Why are we unhappy? Well, 2 years before we had the opportunity to sell, we had changed something about how we were operating. And we had flipped from being a sustainable, profitable business that was very long-term focused and very creative to we thought we were missing out on opportunities because all the other entrepreneurs I talked to, they weren't practical founders. They're often venture-backed founders. They're like, yeah, you've got a tiger by the tail. Like, you got to go. You got to invest way more. You're failing.
In Boston. That's what people do.
You're failing because you're too profitable. And at first we ignored that, but you hear that from enough people. And also first time being an entrepreneur, you get imposter syndrome. You're like, maybe they're right. So we had thrown the throttle down and we were no longer profitable. We were hiring. Well, if we had a new idea for something, we'd hire people to do it. And we just kept doing that. And so we grew the number.
It's almost like the venture funded game, right?
That's basically what we did. We did the venture funded game with our own money. And because we've been profitable for a few years, we had cash in the bank that we could use to fund this. So we were doing that and it wasn't working the way we expected it to. And actually what it had done is without ever saying out loud that we didn't want to be long-term focused or we didn't want to be creative, everyone had gotten hyper short-term focused. And the reason that happens is you make a forecast, but you're running negative, not positive. If you're planning to lose 50K in a month and then the revenue doesn't, you're forecasting revenue growth, not as much revenue growth shows up. And instead of losing 50K, you lose 80. You're like, okay, I can afford to lose 80. But like, if this happens again, it might get worse. And that's exactly what happened is like our revenue didn't grow as much as we were expecting because we had crazy growth goals. Our expenses were growing and pegged to that revenue growth. So our losses started adding up. So we went from losing 50,000, 80,000, 100,000 to we were losing $300,000 a month when we were getting these offers. And so we decided, let's fix it. We realized that it changed everyone's mentality to get short-term focused. And we thought we weren't actually just doing worse work. And if we were actually long-term focused, we'd do better work and we'd grow more. So that was the moment that you would think you would sell to get off the ride. But instead we said, no, we're going to fix the ride. We're going to fix it. And so let's not sell. And we have to get profitable again. And we decided this was a rare opportunity because our angel investors, we'd had about $1.4 million we raised in the early days. They wanted us to sell because of course they did. Because it was an incredible return. So we're like, let's make it right with them and let's do a big reset on the business. So we ended up raising $17 million in debt. We used that to fund what's called a tender offer. So we bought back control from our angels. They could decide how much they wanted to sell. We got liquidity for early employees we'd given stock options to. So it was, for them, it was like a liquidity event. And then having debt would force us to be profitable. So we wouldn't be able to like overthink it. We would have to be profitable to serve the debt. And our hunch, our belief in our core was that if we got to be profitable again, that the business would shift back towards being long-term focused and we'd actually do better work. And that ended up being exactly what happened. And so we had a huge swing into EBITDA. We were on track to lose 3 million. The year we did the buyback, the year after we had 6 million of positive EBITDA. So we had a $9 million swing in 1 year.
Did you have layoffs and right sizing?
We had no layoffs. We just stopped hiring. We consolidated and we said, we're going to focus more. We're going to cut down the number of things we're doing. We're going to focus on more important things. And we ended up getting more revenue growth by doing that. That's the funny thing. Is like
Okay.
our percentage revenue growth went up because we focused. And of course, some people did leave because they got the return. They're just like, I don't want to be here anymore. But ultimately, it was like we learned this thing that worked in the early days that we lost became this like hard won lesson in the end, which is like profit and growth aren't actually at odds. In a lot of cases, profit is how you grow.
It's really amazing, that epiphany. It makes me think, Chris, that VC funded companies, they play this game. They raise a little funding and then you got to hit the bigger goal. The goals go up and you get behind. So you're chasing it. You're kind of throwing at the money at the problem. And the DNA is this race. It's not very healthy and not very efficient, but it's a race and sometimes it works. But you guys, usually when they can't raise any more money and they have to get profitable, it takes the air out of the balloon completely. They have to have the layoffs, the DNA. They don't have a DNA of efficient, profitable, profit plus growth kind of thing. But you guys had the DNA before and you were kind of playing the game, but you went back to your core game there, and you doubled down. You stopped thinking about the 17 ideas you could fund finally. And
we said focus is going to be what wins and persistence. Yeah. And it's funny because back to like the beginning of the conversation, where is Wistia now? We are doing way more stuff today than we ever have before. We have way more people. It was when COVID hit, we were 90 people. So we've doubled the team. And we actually did most of that doubling in 1 year to expand the product footprint. And, but the thing is, we went into it, we said, we're going to stay profitable. We're not going to get us into a position again where we model our expenses off this like wild revenue growth. And if we miss it, we have to stop. We have to like change direction. We have to take the air out of the balloon, lose the momentum. We said, no, we've learned this hard won lesson. Like, even though we're going to do all this more investment, hire all these people, we believe this is a huge opportunity. We also think it's important to keep some profit. And that's going to be our buffer so that if things don't work, we could be a little bit more conservative on the expense side, give ourselves the freedom to stay long-term focused. And it's worked like unbelievably well. I can't even tell you how well it's worked. It's crazy.
Well, you and I have both seen all the founders who were burning and they're desperate in their head. And, this is crazy. They can't sleep at night and they finally get to break even, a little bit of profit and money in the bank. And the world is completely changed. That security with a profit and cash in the bank gives them the confidence to be creative. It's a little bit like that structure allows creativity. That conservative on the base allows, a relaxation, that healthiness. And we totally see that over and over again. You also had profit sharing in there, that your employees, instead of having stock options and playing this someday maybe game and not really understanding that, would quickly see that profits equals compensation equals growth equals profits equals compensation.
We introduced a profit sharing after the buyback, where we just take a percentage of the profit and divide it back to people based on their salaries, because we audit salaries to make sure we're paying people equitably. And, we do that, like annual compensation reviews and all those things is like a really good mechanism to do that. And actually the funny thing is that we eventually, as we started getting into all of this other product stuff, and as I talked about the market being early stage, we're like, well, when I go at something, I go hard at it. Like, if it's an early stage market and we think there's actually that much opportunity, we need to make sure the team is sharing that. So we reintroduced equity last year. And so we have a bonus that's based on profit sharing, and we also have an equity program. And we've actually shown we can get liquidity for people through doing tender offers. So that's how we did it last time with the buyback, is this like, you get a price, you decide how much you want to sell of your shares. And so that's a thing that we'll look at doing in the future as a way to give people that return if they want it, but also have everyone incentivized around like building this big thing and having real ownership in it.
Well, another contradiction is we see this with public companies, that the quarterly profit goal, the measurement of earnings per share and the multiples there, which drives, for traditional companies, the valuation, which is so important, and the stock price and so forth, that profit means short term. But Chris, you're saying profit means long term.
Yeah,
I don't
think
understand.
that's the counterintuitive thing. I think it's actually back to emotion, right? It's just like, what fuels us and what are we paranoid about? And
Mm-hmm.
and mindset. That's like so much. I mean, you asked me how am I still doing this? So much of this stuff is mindset.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where I've definitely made a lot of mistakes over the years too. Is like hiring people whose mindset is like defeatist, and you don't realize that, but they see a problem like it's not going to work. This is really going to sink us. This is a real problem, and yeah, sometimes there's huge problems. But if you look at a huge problem and try to figure out how to turn it on its head so it's an opportunity, some of those problems, yeah, they're stay problems. Some of them turn into opportunities. And if you don't look at it that way, you can't make that happen. And so so much of this stuff is, I just kind of admitted to myself at some point, you can never get the timing right. It's impossible. If you don't, as you said, you don't know how long this stuff is going to take. My favorite like tech example from this recently is the Apple Vision Pro. I don't know, have you played with one of those?
Not yet.
So I have one of these things. I also have like back here, I have like an Oculus Pro, and I had like the first Oculus 7 years ago.
Uh-huh.
And when I had the first Oculus, I'm like, this is incredible. This is going to change everything. And I thought it would be similar to the early days of Wistia. I thought it would be like 4 years or something. And here I am 7 years later, or whatever it is.
Oh, right.
The Apple Vision Pro is incredible. If you use it, it's like basically the best screen I've ever used. I can completely see how people would use this instead of having extra monitors at home, because you can just mirror your screen to the massive monitor. I can see how you'd use it to watch content if you're watching it by yourself or use it on a plane, all those things. But it's too big. It's too bulky. And like people are not going to putting something on your face really matters. Like it's got to be crazy comfortable. It's got to look good. So how long will it take before we get incredible VR that actually fits in sunglasses? I don't know, man.
It's crazy.
I mean, it could be 5 years. It could be 20. Like, I really don't know. And nobody knows. And I think if you look at your markets and you can see things like that, it's like, I don't know how long it's going to take. Then how will you act? What decisions will you make in that kind of context? And I think you actually can prepare for that future world, but you're going to balance it against other opportunities that you see. You're going to think about, how do I stay in the game versus like, I have to be successful very fast or it's over. You're going to care more about who you hire. You're going to spend a lot more time on certain things, because the environment that you have and the culture you have, you realize is what you're living in. Like it is your life. And so you get it right. Your life is fun and easy, creative, doing great stuff. You get it wrong and it's really painful and you can't keep going.
And there's no excuse. You're not going to be building this fast and sell the company and hand it off to somebody before, the tech debt is solved or the culture problems are solved. There's a lot of bad practices inside businesses that get buried when they sell the company and everybody claps, right? But you have to deal with the long term. You have to deal with your stuff.
I think people also don't realize that if you sell the company and you're still there, the problems in your business. And the acquirer is going to find the problems too. They're going to tell you to fix them. That was actually another reason why we didn't sell. It was like,
you're going to have to fix them anyway.
We had a friend who had sold his business and he thought exactly that. He's like, I'm not going to deal with these problems anymore. And he's like, I got there and they made me fix them. And then I did fix them and it worked. and I remember Brendan and I talking about this. We're like, so should we just try to fix it ourselves? Okay. And it's a very different mentality of like, no, you're in control. You have the agency to do this. Like, you can fix them. And a lot of times problems are easier than we think. We just like make them into a big deal. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, do you have a board these days? Part of a productive board is helping CEOs see the things that they need to fix and helping them get through it. Some investors are very useful with that and others are not. But did you have a board through all of this, or was it you and Brendan doing, hikes together that would solve all these problems?
So we have a board. The board is me and Brendan, one other person, who was a very early investor of ours. And it had always been the three of us. I was always concerned about control from the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
So
okay. I sense that.
And then after we did the buyback though, we dissolved the board and then we reconstituted it. And we said, okay, Brendan and I, we still want advice. We still want other eyes and ears in the business. So we asked that person to come back. We said, hey, we want you to come back, but we want you to represent all the shareholders. We don't want you to look at this as like you're pro investor and like the employees and us are different. We want you to look holistically. And he said, that sounds great. And then we have two non-voting board advisors who are, one is an operational expert who was a COO at MailChimp for a long time. Another one is an investor who actually had operated at Wistia for a while, and he runs like a search firm. And so we meet with the board 3 to 4 times a year in like a formal capacity, go through all the numbers and our plans and what have you, and use them as like a board, like a sounding board and questions and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Awesome. What else has changed about the business now that it's been long on, you went from funded with little angel funding and some investors hanging out there to now you're kind of unfunded. It's you don't have an obligation to sell at any time, nothing like that. You don't have a board. You don't have preferred shareholders that have certain terms that might hang over your head, so forth here. How does it feel to be running a company? It's probably north of 50 million revenue. It's probably getting to 100 million revenue. I know you can't say, but how does it feel to be running a company like that? Is it same stuff, different day? You get some good, some bad, and
yeah, I think at this point, it feels great. I think there's always challenges in any business whenever you're trying to grow. If you're trying to stay the same, less challenges, like less variables changing. If you're trying to grow, which we are, there's always different things happening that you have to face down and deal with. I would say, you learn just how important the right systems are. Like a big question I ask myself is like, are our systems self-learning? So the way that we run our meetings, the way that we do our planning, the way that we set our goals, like, are they actually all self-learning? And if they are, if they get better every time, you just need them to get incrementally better. As long as you can do that, adds up to a very big impact over time. I think the ownership we feel is real. There's something that feels like once we did the buyback, there was like one weight that was lifted from the investors and another weight that was put on us of like, this is really up to us to screw up or not, to make the most of it. And I like that feeling because for me, it lets me trust my instincts actually more. I don't overthink it as much as like when there's, what do these other people want or what do they need? I think we can be more pure in terms of your wants and needs and why you're doing the things that you're doing. I think it's also allowed us to be really patient on a lot of stuff. Like all the big change we've been through recently required hiring tons of people, breaking a million things, hiring more people, breaking stuff, changing how teams work, changing culture, changing goal setting. And then and once we believed that the systems were the right systems with the right people in the right way, like actually being patient and letting the things like start to work and not pushing them too hard, because I know that will sometimes break them. And so, yeah, it's all of those things. I don't know. I think the other thing I would say is that it's funny. Last week I went to this career thing at my high school. First time they did this, trying to get high school students to meet with different folks, doctors and psychologists and finance folks. And I was there for the entrepreneurship thing. And I think one thing I said there, which I'm thinking about now, is we just underestimate like the change that you can create running a business.
Yes.
And that like, I mean, when I thought about entrepreneurship when I was in high school, I was like, who are these people who just want to be rich? What is that? And you realize that it really is about more than money. I think it's like that's the truth. Like, yes, the byproduct is you end up making, it's the scorecard. You end up growing the revenues and growing the profit and the valuations and all this stuff. But there's other ways to make money. And I think they're probably easier than entrepreneurship. But what you get with entrepreneurship is you get to build a community. You get to build a workforce. You get to have an impact people's lives. You get to impact your customers' lives. You get to, the thrill of making something that actually saves someone time at work. Like that can change someone's career. Yeah. And I think, I don't know, there's, we talk about, should you follow your passion? And I think we get passionate about things that we're good at. You just have to figure out the stuff that you're good at.
Yeah.
And that's where, for me, it's just like, yeah, I'm hyper passionate about this. I think I'm pretty good at it. And I can very easily foresee doing it for a very, very long time. And I hope that for everybody. I hope people can find things that they really care about, that they want, like, that don't feel like work. Like that's what entrepreneurship can give you. If you can find the right business and find the right opportunity.
Thanks for sharing that. Chris, you talked about patience before. I think patience is one of the superpowers of practical founders. They don't have a gun to their head and goals that are unreasonable in front of them, especially in the early days when you're trying to get to product market fit, which generally can't be rushed, and serendipity has to happen and all that. As a profitable growing software company in a big market, the video collaboration market now, there's a lot of competitors. Which scares you more? A competitor coming directly at you that has 50 million in funding, or four guys in India coming directly at you who are really passionate about this?
Earlier in my career, the first one. Later in my career, the second one.
So a funded competitor could come in and...
No, funded is what used to scare me.
Oh, I see. Okay, there we go.
I think that it's always comes down to incentives. I've had a million competitors, and I've gotten to know many of the other founders, like when they've sold or whatever. And like, turns out we have a lot in common. This is what and I like them all who I've met. But what I think that ends up happening is, if you're in a big enough space, for these competitors to continue to exist, everyone has to find something about what they're doing that's unique and different. And be it the customers that they serve, their business model, the approach, whatever. And what people get wrong about competition is, like, they focus on the year, they focus on the 2 years that they're going head to head with somebody. They don't focus on the 5 or 10. And I think when you focus on the 5 or 10, it's a lot easier to navigate around competition. And the way you navigate around competition is, like, you just better serve the customer. Like, it's very simple. And I think it's that's something that I think, like, I have learned the hard way, is like, the market wants what it wants. Like, they want you to do more stuff. They want the price lower. They want different features. They want you to combine tools. I don't care if you don't want to do it, but, like, the market's demanding it of you. If you don't do it, they'll go somewhere else. And if you do it, they will come to you. And staying really in tune with the customer and what they actually need. Even everything about how Wistia is set up, I'm talking all about me. I'm talking about Brendan. I'm talking about my life. I'm talking about joy. But if we decide that there's some aspect of our market that requires massive change, or Wistia will not be successful, and that change might dramatically impact my day-to-day, I will look at it and I will do it. If that's what I think the market needs. And I think that is not how I used to look at it. We didn't always put the customers first in that way. We didn't understand that their needs would be constantly evolving and need to change. By the way, I think the way we're set up is the best positioned way to solve those problems for customers. But I do say that because I think that people get that wrong, and they just think about competition on the wrong time scale. And if you have a lot of competition, you're in a massive market, you should be able to have a number of large companies. But incentives and investment is what screws things up for folks. Is like, you raise too much money, too much preference stack, valuation goes down, team leaves. Turnover, COOs goes public, stock down, people are demotivated. No, who's going to fix it to compete? Nobody. Like, that's what happens. So, for your own incentives, I think thinking a lot about how you're funded is like really important, how you can use that in the market to do something different than everybody else.
That superpower. Well, thanks for sharing that. It's a great example, and you're going long with this business. And Ben at MailChimp went long and built a big business, eventually sold this. Could you consider ever selling this? I don't know if you have a number that's a crazy number in your head, or when do you and Brendan say it's time to go? Maybe the market changes and you try a few things and you're not good at what the market needs you to be, or...
I mean, that would be a reason,
Yeah.
is like, if we did a bunch of stuff and it really didn't work, then that would demotivate the team. That would be bad for customers, whatever. And so
Yeah.
maybe you just look at it and they're like, oh man, like we shouldn't do this anymore. It's not worth it. Try to avoid that scenario. I think the real answer to that question is if we're actually having fun doing this and we're growing,
Yeah.
we should keep doing it.
Yeah.
I think the reason to sell is if we could do something back to the market, if we could do something dramatically better for customers by combining with another company that has complementary things or something, that would be a reason to take selling seriously. It all comes back to the customer. If there's something we could do for them that we can't do today, and we could serve them much faster, better, tackle something we wouldn't be able to do otherwise, someone else has some unique thing, that would be a reason to take it seriously. Because it's back to the same reason, if we don't do that, somebody else will. And and that comes back to, do we know what the customers want? Are we talking to them enough? Are we getting their information for what they need in a lot of different ways? Like that is the most important thing.
The most important thing. Chris, thanks for sharing your story here. For practical founders that have got a SaaS business that they're having fun with, it's 1, 3, 5, 10 million ARR, they're growing it. Once you get into those ranges, there's life-changing wealth when somebody comes knocking to say, we'd like to acquire your company. What do you tell the founders about the possibility of going long, to have this ever compounding fun adventure that goes on for a long time? When should a founder consider keep running it for a long time and not take the money? And
when should they
imagine the
consider
price?
that option? I think you have to have some other way of getting some liquidity at some point. You need to be set up to do dividends, or you need to have like other patient capital that wants. You need some at some point. If you're going to give yourself any liquidity, you're not going to keep doing it. There you go. I think that's the truth. But I don't think it has to be a crazy amount. I think it just has to be enough. I think the reason to go long is if the market you're in, you think really has a lot of runway. And if you're really excited about the people that you work with and the problem that you're on, that's much easier to go long. If you are not excited about that, or because people talk about like the problem sets being different and the connection to people on the team being different. And that's true. Like that stuff does change
when you're bigger.
You'll still be interacting with a lot of people on the team. The team's way bigger, just be different groups of people. You'll still need to figure out what customers want. If you're the person who's like, you have to try to be in touch with what brings you joy in the work. And if you were looking at it and you're like, this doesn't bring me joy, I just need to sell, you should definitely sell. Don't prolong your pain, I think is like 100% the case. A lot of it comes back to team. A lot of it. Like if you have the right team, it is much easier to keep going. And I feel like if you look at a lot of the truly great businesses, you'll see that there are pockets of people who've been there for a very long time, who have worked together and done something really magical. And if you have that, you should hold on to it. Like that is actually very rare.
Yeah, it's Jim Collins' Good to Great way back when. He looked at all the companies, and what was one of the defining characteristics of the top 9? It was the leadership team had been through thick and thin for 20 years together, like Southwest Airlines and other ones like that. So really amazing. Any last thoughts for practical founders out there? Words of encouragement or advice,
the thing I would say is like a lot of times it's also really, I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs get stuck when they say like they hit 1 million and then the next year they hit a couple million. They're like, I can see my way to 6 or I can see my way to 8, but like, I don't see how I could get to 20. I don't see how I could get to 30. It's so common because you think you're limited. You have these limiting beliefs around the size team you can manage or how you do comms or whatever. And I just think like the world is a lot bigger than you realize. Like, we live in an internet world where everything is connected. If you are a tiny fraction of the populace that cares about something on an absolute basis is a huge number of people. My favorite example is just go look at subreddits of things. Go find some niche show and go look at how many people are in there, and you'll find like some niche YouTube show that has 200,000 subscribers on YouTube, has like 150,000 people also on Reddit talking about it all the time. Like you can, if you can get to 3, if you can get to 5 and the customers look the same, and you're not in a tiny, tiny market, you could probably get pretty big. And the reason that you won't is because you get too tired. you sacrifice on your values of who you work with, or you let the business, things get too far away from like the day-to-day of what's actually happening in the culture of the business. And conversely, if you just do those other things and you're patient, you often can get really big. And but it's all about the inputs and how you spend your time. But I think it is just, I've seen too many people give up with success, actually, and they don't realize how lucky they already are. And I wish if more people could keep going, they could change more. They could take on more. They could, help their employees more. They could change their markets more, because it's just such a rewarding, fun thing to do.
That's the magic trick. When you scale, you can create more change in the world. How many people have you helped buy houses that work for you?
Exactly.
And how many companies did you help grow faster and all of that? It's
an amazing thing. And also, like, we've had a lot of people who used to work at Wistia. They left, they came back. I think we've had like 5 boomerangs or something. It's amazing. And like, they're all better for it. And like, you don't look at someone even leaving as the same thing when you have a very long term view. You're like, well, I don't expect most people to stay here 20 years like me, so they're going to leave. But if they leave on the right terms, maybe they'll learn something else really interesting. Maybe there'll be another opportunity in the future. And it changes so many things. But again, it's mindset, and you have to be in the position to do that. And that's why I think being profitable as you scale is also helpful. It's much easier to be long-term focused.
There you go. Well, thanks for sharing that perspective and being a great example of a compounding growth, profitable, practical founder that's changing the world and putting a dent in the universe. Thanks for being on the Practical Founders podcast, Chris.
Thanks for having me, Greg. This was a delight.
Thanks for watching this week's founder interview on the Practical Founders podcast. Be sure to hit like and then subscribe to my Practical Founders YouTube channel to keep up with my weekly videos for serious software founders who are building valuable companies without big funding. Check out my blog and information about my Practical Founders CEO peer groups at practicalfounders.com. And follow me on LinkedIn to keep the conversation going. See you next week.